If you like stories where the underdog refuses to stay under and entire families learn the hard way how appreciation actually works, tap like, hit subscribe, and tell me where you're watching from. I'm Heather 32, Boston bred, and last month my entire family told me, in a neat little group chat, that I wasn't worth keeping around. My father, Robert Miller, wrote, "We think it's best you step away for now." My mother reacted with a heart, because that's what she does when she's afraid a real reaction might disturb the furniture. My Aunt Patricia tapped a thumbs up like she was RSVPNG to brunch. I stared at the screen for 17 long seconds. Then I typed, "Understood. I'll respect that and step away from the family fund, too." I closed my laptop, walked into my home office, and initiated the transfer. By 2:15 a.m., my phone was face down on my nightstand and buzzing like a trapped hornet. By sunrise, I had 89 missed calls and 17 voicemails. The first one from my dad said, "Call me." The bank flagged everything. I texted back 2 words, "Honoring your decision." That was before they realized everything else I had. The Millers weren't just any family from Boston finance. We were the Millers, as in Miller Financial Advisors, the name that used to hover like a slogan over exclusive Cape Cod charity auctions and the kind of golf tournaments that accept your score if it looks more attractive on the plaque. My grandfather, Thomas, started it after World War II with a card table, a ledger, and absolute faith that numbers, properly listened to, could keep a person honest. He built a book of clients with the patience of a man who remembered bread lines and the fervor of a man allergic to debt. My father, Robert, took that book and turned it into a glossy hardcover. He tripled the staff, opened an elegant brick office on Beacon Hill, then an even more elegant glass one downtown, and hung our last name on a brushed steel plaque that ate the light in the lobby. We lived in a 5-bedroom colonial in Brookline-wide porch, 3 fireplaces, a kitchen where my mother staged something between dinner and policy. Framed photos of my parents with politicians lined the hallway, governors, senators, a vice president whose smile never quite reached his eyes. Diana, my mother, does not run numbers. She runs atmospheres. She hosted dinners where million-dollar decisions slid across the table under the cover of pie. She has a gift for making the powerful feel nurtured, a gift she sharpened into an instrument and then into armor. She likes fresh flowers, crisp linens, and people who do not raise problems that might require rearranging the seating chart. I was supposed to be more like her. I am not. When I was 8, my father left a stack of the Wall Street Journal on the bar cart and found me an hour later with a highlighter. "Sweetheart," he said, amused, "are you coloring the stock pages?" "I'm circling the companies that lied last quarter," I told him. They hadn't technically lied, they'd just buried the lead 3 schedules deep. I could still feel that first electric shock of pattern recognition, how one number in a footnote can change the meaning of a paragraph. At 10, I asked my father, on the way to Sunday service, why the bond market yawned when a certain tech CEO said restructuring, and he gave the sort of laugh dads use when they mean both pride and "please stop asking me that in front of your mother." By 12, I could look at an earnings call transcript and predict the stock's opening behavior with an accuracy that made my math teacher suspicious enough to call my parents in. "You're making the other students uncomfortable," she said, eyes on me like I was a substitute teacher wearing a child costume. My mother brought me a cookie afterward and told me softly, carefully, "Honey, it's good to shine. Just make sure you don't blind people with it." At Wharton, I graduated top of my class with a double major in finance and economics, 2 published papers, and an obsession with algorithmic risk models that let me translate instinct into code. The day I joined the family firm, my father put me under my cousin Jake, 27, loud, overconfident, and 7 months ahead of me at the office. "You need to understand how we do things in the real world," my father said, and patted my shoulder like I was a golden retriever being told not to chew the upholstery. Jake had a desk plant he killed and never threw away, a golf handicap he lied about, and a phone that never left his hand. He claimed relationship manager on his signature and believed sincerity was something you commissioned for the holidays. He also believed strategy meant calling the last person who agreed with him and asking for a vibe check. While Jake networked and my uncles told stories about the good old instinctual days, I built systems quietly, obsessively. I created models that cut through noise, that refused to be seduced by any single shiny metric, that could predict client risk appetite better than the clients themselves. My division consistently outperformed market averages by 7 to 9% when the rest of the industry threw confetti over too. Clients began asking for me by name. My father began saying the team a lot in board meetings where I was the only person from the team invited. There is a particular species of family pride that looks like we did it even when we didn't write a single line of code. We also had the family fund a private pool separate from the business, where Millers dropped capital for shared ventures, down payments, and pet projects that needed glossy brochures. 12 million, give or take, most years. I contributed more than anyone supposed I could, for 0.2 million over 8 years, seeded with my bonuses and the dividends from personal investments no one knew I made. What the family did not know what no one knew outside my little circle was that I had been building a second balance sheet since college. While the clan summered in the Hamptons, I was taking meetings in windowless coffee shops with two-person startups and college dropouts building circuitry with the manic clarity of prophets. While my mother bought a new set of Italian knives for the summer house, I bought minority stakes in 4 emerging data companies most investors couldn't even pronounce yet. I filed patents on my Model 7 and counting on weekends, sleeves rolled, hair up, and the thrill in my gut that comes when you protect your life's work with law. I bought a Back Bay brownstone under an LLC, renovated the 3rd floor into a war room, and hired a tiny, loyal team of 4 underdogs so tight they squeaked. I drove a pragmatic car and wore blazers I could afford when I was 22. Camouflage isn't only for forests. Every month there was a family meeting in the downtown conference room mahogany paneling, framed black and whites of my grandfather shaking hands with men I've only ever seen in textbooks. I would present detailed analyses and growth projections, and Uncle Richard would interrupt by the second slide with, "That's all very technical, but what does your father think?" My mother would pull me aside after and apply her bomb. "Men don't like women who sound too smart, sweetheart. Let your father and uncles feel important. It's better for everyone." My Aunt Patricia, board member by birthright, effort by rumor, perfected the art of delayed plagiarism. Remember when Heather mentioned international markets? She'd say, 3 weeks after I'd presented a 60-page Europe expansion plan, "I've been thinking we should expand to Europe." She'd look around as if she'd just reinvented the wheel's cousin. The minutes would reflect Patricia's suggestion because the minutes were typed by her assistant. My cousin Amanda marketing, because someone had to be, was the only one who admitted the math of the dynamic out loud. Over salads one day she said, quietly, "They do it to me too. They just do it to you with more polish, because you make them money." I stayed because leaving a family business is part treason, part surgery. Because my grandfather's handwriting lived in a file in the back of the office safe, and I didn't want to leave it alone. Because there was a version of my father in my head in which he saw me fully and I hadn't met her yet. Call it strategic patience. Call it conflict avoidance. Either way, the day was coming when it would stop working. The quarterly planning meeting that turned the tide started like most coffee, clock, and a late Jake. He breezed in 15 minutes past start time, wrapping up the Donovan account. The Donovan account was mine. I'd asked him to sit in on one preliminary call while I finished the projections he was now delaying. My father lit up like the scoreboard. "Client relationships always come first," he beamed. "Why don't you tell us how that's going before Heather starts with all her numbers?" The first 20 minutes belonged to Jake recapping 6 months of my work in language that took the teeth out of it. I let it wash over me because the truth has a way of being patient. I started my presentation. Slide 2. Uncle Richard leaned back, laced his hands over a stomach earned with cigars and complacency, and said, "Seems unnecessarily complicated. Our clients like us because we keep things simple." Aunt Patricia nodded. "All these algorithms just confuse people." Aunt Patricia confuses algorithm with allegory, and I do not correct her anymore because I do not correct paint. I said, calmly, "Our client surveys show they're coming to us because we're adding sophistication. The market's changed. If we don't adapt, we lose to firms that do." My father tapped his penne rhythm I have known since I was 5. It means wrap it up before I decide for you. Heather, theory is one thing. This isn't theory, I said, keeping my voice level. I implemented on the Westfield portfolio as a pilot. They posted a 14% return this quarter. Silence. Then my father. You implemented without authorization? We discussed it last month, I said. You told me to do whatever I thought best with Westfield because it was underperforming. He shook his head. I certainly didn't authorize a complete overhaul. In my head, the golf tournament that had been on the office TV during that conversation flickered back to life. Sometimes the line between forgetting and not listening is just a TV with volume. Jake jumped in, no slides, no data, just confidence. I have a simpler approach, he said, and proceeded to replicate a plan I had proposed last year with the crucial safeguards removed. My father nodded as if someone had opened the curtains. That's the kind of straightforward thinking clients expect, he said, and looked at me like, see? No need to overdo it. That afternoon, I tried to speak to him in his office, where a photograph of me at 6 in a blue dress sits beside a bronze of him shaking a governor's hand. Dad, Jake's plan exposes clients to unnecessary risk. You're too caught up in details, he said, scrolling scores. This business is relationships and instinct. Relationships and instinct don't keep us compliant, I said. Numbers do, he looked up. You know what your problem is? You've never trusted the family way. I walked out and, because I don't do dramatics in hallways, took the long route to my office. In the break room, I overheard Aunt Patricia to Uncle Richard. Heather's presentations give me a headache. All those charts and big words like she's trying to make us feel stupid. Robert needs to rein her in. Uncle Richard grunted his thesis. The girl doesn't understand our culture. I sat alone at my desk a long time and let the fact breathe. I could double their money, and I would still be the girl. That night in my brownstone, with my city stretching gold through the windows, I checked everything. Patents, in my name, clean. My independent entities, separated, airtight. Client contracts, who had personal service clauses with me versus with the firm. My models, documentation and timestamps the length of a small novel. Not because I was leaving. Because women with leverage sleep better. The week that followed was death by small cuts. My father translated a tax strategy I was offering a client until it became inaccurate. Jake presented my risk model at a training as if he had drummed it on a boat. My aunt forgot to add me to an email chain about a strategic retreat at my uncle's lake house. The retreat I learned about by seeing it on Jake's Instagram story. On Tuesday, I arrived early to set up for our largest client. Through the glass wall, I watched the meeting already in progress. My father, Jake, 2 uncles, my slides on the screen. The client nodded. Jake smiled. The kind of smile that remembers to make eye contact. Something inside me stopped accommodating. 3 days later, the group message arrived. After considerable discussion among senior family members, my father wrote, "We think it would be best if Heather steps away from client management for now. We appreciate her background work, but recent feedback suggests clients respond better to our traditional approach. This isn't permanent, just a chance to realign with the Miller way." The hearts and thumbs ups popped like popcorn. Agree from Uncle Richard. We support this from Aunt Patricia. Happy to take over her accounts in the transition from Jake. My mother, we only want what's best. I waited 17 minutes long enough to be sure no one would suggest we talk like adults, then typed, "Understood." I'll respect that decision and step away from the family fund, too. Wishing everyone continued success. I put my phone face down. Then I logged into the family fund portal. We keep at least 50% liquid. That was my policy. Ironically, for flexibility, I initiated withdrawal of my entire contribution, $4. 2M, plus the growth attributable to my trades within the fund, another $1.7 million. The portal asked if I was sure. I clicked yes. I submitted the formal notices to our family attorney with relevant sections highlighted. I blind copied myself to a private account. I messaged my own team. Monday, 9 a.m. War Room. Full deck. Then I did something radical. I ordered Thai, watched half a movie, and went to bed with my phone off. By 7 a.m. Saturday, when I turned it back on, the notifications behaved like a slot machine. 64 missed calls. 127 texts. 17 voicemails. I made coffee. I listened. 10:48 p.m. My father. There must be some mistake with the fund transfer. Call me. 11:10 p.m. This is completely unacceptable. Whatever point you're trying to make this isn't the way. 1:03 a.m. Your mother is upset. 2:15 a.m. The one that told the truth. What happened? The bank flagged everything. The fund is frozen. Call me. Please. The 6:30 a.m. voicemail carried a sound I had rarely heard in my father's voice. Uncertainty. Whatever we did to upset you, this seems extreme. The bank needs your verification to unfreeze. Please call me. I texted. I'm honoring your decision. You asked me to step away. I have. I withdrew my contribution under Section 7.3. The freeze is standard protocol for large transactions. I've submitted documentation. I'm available Monday, 9 a.m. at my home office. Address emailed. He called instantly. I declined. Then I silenced the entire family thread and went for a run that turned into a walk that turned into me sitting on a bench in the public garden watching a duck glare at a goose for breaking an invisible rule. I felt light. Sandra, my college friend who now ran operations at the bank, called me in the afternoon. She didn't break rules. We both like sleeping at night. Your family is vocal, she said, humor soft under professionalism. Your dad's been on the phone with 3 departments. Your uncle tried to come in and speak to the bank president. I'm sorry, I said. Don't be, she laughed. You followed the book. The freeze is standard anti-fraud. Verification lands Monday morning. If anyone asks, I didn't call. Friends from freshman year statistics who survived group projects together know exactly how to share information without endangering each other. The texts kept coming like weather. Uncle Richard, this is sabotage. Aunt Patricia, we women need to support each other. Jake, what about the Henderson deal? A $20 million commercial project that needed our fund for the down payment. The bank freeze had turned their runway into a cliff. My mother, honey, please, we can fix this. Clients started pinging me because my father, ever the strategist, had given out my personal number and told people to contact me about temporary technical issues. I sent careful, professional reassurances. Client accounts were separate, unaffected, and secure. Happy to talk Monday. I did not disparage my family. I like sleeping at night. At midnight, Jonathan, the family attorney, called. He has the calm voice of a man who knows where the bodies aren't. I've reviewed your withdrawal documentation, he said. It's in order. The timing, however, has caused significant challenges. I understand, I said. As long as we're in agreement that I acted within my rights, he cleared his throat. Your father asked me to propose immediate restoration of funds with a renegotiated leadership role for you. I'm happy to discuss Monday, I said. He was quiet. He also mentioned potential legal action regarding intellectual property and client relationships. I let the silence do the work for me. Then, my patents are registered in my name. Client service clauses are standard and enforceable. I'll discuss Monday. For what it's worth, he added, I advised him against posturing. Good advice, I said, and we both smiled into the dark. By Sunday, the tone shifted. Rage cooled to bargaining. My mother left a voicemail invoking Grandpa Thomas and disappointment like a weather front. Aunt Patricia wrote a paragraph about how she'd always admired my acumen. Uncle Richard texted, "Get over your hurt feelings. This is business." Amanda, the cousin who sees clearly, sent, "Proud of you." Coffee? I wrote back yes. At 8:17 p.m., my security camera pinged. My father stood on my front step, posture crumpled at the edges. Press shirt wrinkled. A man who had spent 48 hours learning that bank freezes do not yield to volume. I opened the door but left the threshold between us like a line on a field. The Henderson deal dies at 9 tomorrow, he said without preface. $3 million down the drain. That sounds like a business problem, I said. You're used to solving those. What does that mean? He asked. It means I'm willing to talk solution in business terms, I said. Monday, 9. Bring whoever you need. He swallowed something pride, maybe, and nodded. 9. At dawn, I turned my dining room into a conference table. Copies of key documents in neat stacks. Coffee, tea, pastries, hospitality is leverage when you control the room. At 8:30, the camera pinged. They came as a unit. My father, Uncle Richard and his color of anger, Aunt Patricia in what she imagines is disarming pastel, Jake doing his best to look like leadership, and Jonathan with his briefcase and ethics. They walked in and looked around like they'd never considered I might be a person with taste. The original artwork on the walls, bought early from artists who needed rent, now very valuable, reset some assumptions. I stood at the head of the table. My father took a seat to my right because old habits look for their chairs even when the room is new. "We're here to resolve this quickly," he began. The Henderson dash, I lifted my hand, palm out, a gesture I learned as a girl in rooms where my hand was the only way to get a sentence. He stopped on instinct, I think, not yet on respect. "Before we talk Henderson," I said, voice even, "we address the larger reality. I withdrew my contribution per our agreement. The bank will unfreeze accounts by noon. I'm prepared to help with Henderson, but we will do this cleanly." "This is ridiculous," Uncle Richard exploded. "You're holding us hostage over what hurt feelings." "This is not about feelings," I said, and watched my father notice that my hands didn't shake. For 8 years, I delivered results beyond market. My division produced 62% of profits last quarter. Clients ask for me. You removed me via group chat citing feedback that doesn't exist. "We were going to discuss it at the retreat," Aunt Patricia said, syrup in her tone. "The retreat I wasn't invited to," I said. "That was an oversight," my father said quickly. Jake snorted. "Come on, Heather. You're making a mountain out of a molehill. You blew up a deal to prove a point." "I didn't blow up anything," I said. "I removed my money from a container I no longer trusted. The fact that it endangered your deal says more about your planning than my point." Jonathan interceded. "Can we address the immediate cash need?" "Yes," I said. "I will wire $5 million today, enough to cover the down payment and buffer. It will be structured as a loan from my personal holdings to the family fund at market interest with standard covenants and a repayment schedule. Jonathan can draft now." "A loan," my father repeated, like I'd suggested we sell the house for parts. "You're charging your family interest." "This is a business," I said gently. "You taught me that. If you prefer private equity rates, I can make a call." Jonathan nodded, because facts are restful. Uncle Richard sputtered extortion. I said negotiation. My father watched me the way a chess player watches a knight that's been quiet for 6 moves and then leaps. "Fine," he said finally. "Draft the loan. But after this you'll return to your role, reinvest, and we'll discuss leadership." "That's not on the table today," I said. "Loan first. Then I take a 1-month leave. At 30 days, we meet to discuss either my return under new terms or an orderly transition of my clients. Those are my non-negotiables," Jonathan said, legally reasonable. He didn't say morally overdue because he is a professional. Aunt Patricia tried sisterhood. "Heather, dear, we all say and do things in the heat of the moment." "It wasn't heat of the moment," I said. "It was a culmination. My work has been dismissed until presented by others. My achievements have been diluted into team. My decisions second-guessed by people who didn't read the memo. And when you decided to cut me out, you did it by text. Silence arrived. It sat down. It got comfortable. For the first time, I let the quiet show them how full it could be of facts." Jake laughed a little, because he doesn't recognize a cliff edge until he's midair. "Let's be real," he said. "You need the Miller name as much as we need your spreadsheets. Where do you think you're going to go?" I pressed a small remote. The television on the wall woke up and displayed a logo. Heather Miller Capital Management. A simple serif. Clean. "I've been operating my own entity for 4 years," I said. The next slide, growth charts that did not apologize. Average client returns, 17%. 0 overlap with Miller Financial clients. Full compliance. "That's impossible," my father said, but he looked like a man who had already realized he'd missed a meeting. "Evenings," I said. "Weekends. Vacation days I didn't take while you were at the lake house." "Violation of your contract," Uncle Richard snapped. I slid the contract to Jonathan. He read. He sighed. "Broadly worded allowance for personal investment activities," he said. "Intended for stocks, but not limited to them." Another slide. The patents. 7, filed across 4 years, all assigned to me. Development logs. Timestamps. Witness signatures. Mine, I said. Documented on my equipment, on my time. Another slide. A list of 27 high net worth clients, none of whose names belong to the family book. Assets under management. 400 million, I said. Personal service clauses standard. 17 of our current Miller clients also have personal service agreements with me that allow them to follow me if I leave. That number represents approximately 230 million in assets. Jake exhaled a whoa before he could edit. I didn't do this to hurt you, I said, because truth can be both knife and bomb. I did it because I realized years ago that respect here would always trail results by a decade, if it ever arrived at all. I did it to protect the work, and if I'm honest, to protect the girl your assumptions wanted me to keep being. My father looked between the screen and my face, and I watched something old loosen. Respect, yes. Regret, too. Regret has the posture of a coat that doesn't fit anymore, but you keep putting it on because it used to be warm. What do you want? He asked. Not what will you take. Not what will it cost me. Just, what is the shape of your boundary? Loan today, I said. 1 month leave to consider. Then a meeting to decide. Either a return under terms that reflect reality or a clean exit with client transitions. Nothing performative. No more minutes that credit the wrong voice. If I return, it will be because the structure protects the results, not because I need holidays with monogrammed napkins. Jonathan drafted the loan while coffee cooled. We signed. The wire hit. The Henderson deal lived. They left with a version of quiet I had never seen them carry. My father lingered. He looked around my home at the paintings he hadn't noticed I could afford, and the shelves of books I'd written notes in, and the sunlight that made a liar out of the portrait of me in his office, still 6 years old. I underestimated you, he said, like the admission itself had weight. You did, I said. I didn't cushion it. He nodded. For what it's worth, he said at the door, your grandfather would have been impressed. He liked numbers that told the truth more than he liked the people who told him not to listen to them. Me too, I said. 30 days is both long and not. I spent them doing 3 things. First, I ran my firm with intention instead of secrecy. My team 4 brilliant humans who believed in competence the way other people believe in horoscopes helped me model 3 scenarios. Absorption of transferred clients from Miller, merger under a protective umbrella, and a clean split with. Non-compete carve-outs. We built playbooks and redundancy. We documented everything twice. We slept some. Second, I rested muscles I had forgotten were mine. I hiked the whites. I ate dinners that lasted longer than inbox refreshes. I read fiction. I went on 2 dates with a civil engineer who thinks spreadsheets are poetry. I said yes to coffee with Amanda. On our 3rd meeting, she said, I applied to 3 design firms, and her eyes did the thing eyes do when a person chooses a self their family never drew for them. I told her I wanted first option to invest in whatever she eventually starts. She laughed and said, you'll get a friends and cousins rate. 3rd, I thought about legacy. Not the brass nameplate version. The math of it. How you pass down not just money, but the rules about who gets to claim credit and who gets to speak. I looked at my grandfather's ledger Jonathan had copied pages for me, sepia and patience, and I thought about Thomas writing it by hand because he trusted his eyes more than any machine. Evolution is a form of respect when it's done on purpose. The night before the meeting, Jonathan sent a carefully worded email. We will arrive prepared to discuss restructuring. My mother texted a heart and a prayer hands emoji and then proud of you. It knocked me sideways for a minute how long I had wanted those 3 words to arrive uninvited. I chose a neutral ground for the meeting, a private room at a restaurant with views of the harbor and a round table because geometry can do more for power dynamics than therapy sometimes. They arrived as a group again, but the edges were softer. 2 new faces, my mother, who rarely encroached beyond linens into business, and Amanda, invited, I suspected, because they had figured out she would be useful in any peace accord. My father opened with something that didn't pretend to be something else. We misjudged you, he said. We misjudged what the business needs to become. We have a proposal. Jonathan passed folders around like communion. They offered to restructure Miller Financial into divisions with profit and loss autonomy. They proposed Miller Capital Management, my division under my leadership, with decision-making authority over strategy, hiring, and client relationships. Compensation tied directly to performance, not to birth order. They proposed a new family fund governance model with voting rights proportional to contribution rather than the equal everyone style that looks fair until you count. What about my independent firm? I asked. A merger, Jonathan said. Your patents remain yours and are licensed to the division under terms you set. Your existing client contracts remain intact with you as primary advisor. The division pays a royalty to your IP holding company. I read the language tight, respectful, careful. Succession, I asked. Because if we do this and you all retire and Jake is suddenly creative director of my life now. Merit-based, my father said, glancing pointedly, I hope at Jake, metrics, benchmarks, client outcomes, not seniority. Uncle Richard, who had been quiet, cleared his throat with humility I didn't know he owned. We resisted change because we were proud of what we built, he said. We confused preservation with legacy. That's on us. Aunt Patricia said, we need to embrace the perspectives your generation brings and manage to make it sound less like a hostage note than I expected. Jake shifted. I reviewed your models, he said, eyes on the table. I didn't understand the depth before. My mother reached across the circular table and squeezed my hand in a way that made me 12 again and brave at the same time. Whatever you choose, she said, I want you to choose it because it makes you happy, not because you owe us. I took a week. Not to play hard to get. To negotiate the details that become life. We adjusted IP language so I could pull patents out if governance ever reverted to the old ways. We wrote non-interference clauses that made my authority not just performative. We built a conflict resolution mechanism with an independent director because trust is not a strategy. And then I signed. Transitions are never smooth. They are merely navigable. There were days my father reverted out of muscle memory and tried to change a decision from a seat he no longer held. I showed him the org chart we'd both signed, and he sat with the discomfort like a man breaking in shoes. Jake slipped and tried to present one of my models as his idea to a client. I smiled and said, that's the H3 risk contour. You'll find the citation in my patent portfolio, and the client laughed and said, I like this new world. Amanda gave notice 6 months later with a portfolio that made me proud in a way that has nothing to do with numbers. I wrote the first check into her design firm, Heather. Don't overcapitalize me, she said, and I said, I like buildings that tell the truth. Go build them. Miller Capital Management outperformed every other division by a margin I tried not to write on a T-shirt. New clients came people who wanted returns, yes, but also wanted to be treated like participants in an honest conversation. Existing clients who had always been Miller clients started asking to be Heather clients, and while we didn't poach, we did not stand in the doorway blocking the view either. The family fund's new voting model changed the temperature in the room almost overnight. When contributions equaled voice, Aunt Patricia discovered the quiet joy of listening. Uncle Richard learned to ask for a model before an opinion. My mother stopped smoothing napkins and started asking questions that cut to the point. One evening, almost a year to the day after the group chat, my father and I stayed late reviewing quarterly results. We sat in the conference room under a photograph of my grandfather at a desk that looks tiny now but must have felt enormous then. He told me once, my father said, eyes on the skyline, that the best legacy isn't preservation, it's evolution. I didn't understand it when he handed me the keys. I thought he meant, don't screw it up. I think he meant, don't be afraid to change it. Evolution is harder, I said. It asks for humility. He smiled sidelong. Pride is persistent. So is data, I said, and we both laughed because that's how we say sorry in our family now. A handful of epilogues, because lives do not resolve on a single page. Sandra at the bank sent me a Christmas card with a photo of her toddler trying to eat tinsel and a note that said, still not breaking any rules, still cheering you on. Ethical people make the best allies. Jonathan the attorney joined the board as our independent director. He is the person who now says, in rooms where everyone is sure they are right, let's ask the numbers what they think. I started a mentorship program for women in finance who are told they're too much. We paired them with senior advisors who are told they're modernizing. The returns, human and financial, are everything I needed them to be. I met with the Henderson principals 2 months after the dust settled. They thanked me for saving a deal they had thought was dead. We almost pulled out, one said. Then we saw the way you structured the rescue, and we realized the person we should have been talking to all along was you. I did not print that and frame it. I did tell Jake, because teaching moments are more effective when they arrive wearing suits. Amanda's firm designed a women's shelter pro bono. I wrote the line item in our foundation's budget for the fixtures. There are days I walk through the lobby just to see the light pooling where she wanted it to and to listen to the sound of the building not lying about its purpose. My mother asked me, over tea, if I had forgiven her for the hearts and the linens. I wish I had been brave earlier, she said. I wish I had told your father to get out of the way sooner. I told her the truth, that survival is a family business too, and that sometimes it takes a crisis to teach a person the difference between keeping the peace and making it. As for the family group chat, it still exists. It has fewer thumbs ups and more links to actual documents. The memes are still bad. The holidays feel less like performance art and more like presents. And my grandfather's handwriting? I framed a copy of one page for my office. The margin note says, in his blocky hand, numbers tell you who you are when you are tempted to forget. I look at it on the days my past tugs at my sleeve and suggests I should be grateful instead of excellent. If you've ever been told in words or sighs or group chats that your light is inconvenient, let me hand you a match. Build your leverage. Document everything. Protect your ideas with law if you can and with witnesses if you can't. Be generous until you're being used. Then be done being used. Offer loans with terms that make sense. Ask for seats you've already paid for. And when the room tries to tell you your value is negotiable, remember that it isn't. Have you ever had to take a dramatic stand to make people recognize your value? Tell me in the comments. I read them. If this story fed the part of you that's ready to stop asking permission, tap like, hit subscribe, and send this to the friend who needs a nudge. The morning my father texted, "We think it's best you step away," I stepped away. That was the last time anyone mistook my willingness to be reasonable for a willingness to be erased. And the first time the Millers, my family, learned that appreciation isn't something you say at a dinner table. It's something you build into the roles.